Hi again, Faith here. I want to just give you a short little demo on how you might apply some dry soil amendments in a low dig, no dig scenario. So you've taken your soil sample, you've sent it to the lab, you've either made this decision on what you're going to apply or someone has helped you make that decision for what you will apply to your soil. We're in mid-May. The season is already started. Biological life is humming along. Our soil temps are above 70 degrees. So I don't want to suggest to you that you put on soil amendments that might bog down your soil biology. I would love for you to just go light for a spring application if you're getting it on late, and consider buffering your soil amendments with a little extra carbon. Could be a compost, could be humates, could be compost. Go with compost, it's easy, a high quality compost. So I've taken a look at the soil sample for this area, and what I'm choosing to apply to this soil, I've sampled this soil before, is to apply a little bit of a gypsum, which is a calcium sulfate, apply a little bit of a rock phosphate, it needs a little phosphorus. I'm going to apply a little bit of boron to help that calcium be taken up by the plants, a little bit of broad spectrum rock dusts, basalt, carbonatite, a little bit of azomite, not too much of any of those things because they need work. They need to be worked on by biology in order to be assimilated into the nutrient cycle. They have to go through biological life first. Everything except for the gypsum and the boron, those two can become soluble and go into the solution of the water in the soil solution and be taken up, through passive uptake by the plant, which is good. We want calcium available to our plants in the early portion of the growing season. Calcium is a vegetative element, really important for developing strong cell walls, which will help us later for disease and pest resistance. It'll help us develop very, high quality fruits. In order to get that calcium to efficiently make its way up to the growing shoot tip or to the little fruitlets, those tomatoes, those baby tomatoes and peppers, we're going to need a little bit of boron. I want to caution you about applying boron. Boron can be very harsh. It can be an herbicide if you apply it in too high of a quantity. And so be very cautious when applying any nutrient. You don't want to apply anything into excess, and you don't want to put yourself into a tie-up scenario. And you also don't want to injure your plants by applying anything that is too harsh. Elemental sulfur can be harsh to the biological life. Boron can be harsh to the biological life, but it also can be quite harsh to your plants if applied in a quantity that's too high, or if it's not buffered with some additional carbon. So I have a primary substrate. The base here is a high quality biological compost. It has been broken down to the point where it actually looks like soil. You couldn't find really much in the way of organic matter left in this compost. It is actually very similar to soil or humus. It is quite broken down. And then I mixed into it the soil amendments I just mentioned. I won't go into quantities. I think it's really important that you work with either an agronomist, an advisor on determining how much nutrient is appropriate to apply once your soil test comes back. But I'll show you how you might apply for a low to no dig scenario. So for this bed, a 4x8, we need 3 pounds of this material. So I'm just going to spread it in a broadcasting fashion over the soil surface. It doesn't need to be, very, very, very precisely placed, but you certainly don't want to apply it in high quantity in one particular place. So broadcast it over the area. We just pulled the mulch back. This bed had been covered with mulch for the last month or so. We did some preliminary plant removal, some nature's cover crops that had developed here over the winter and stuck around. We pulled those, and then we put down some mulch just to keep this bed plantable before the weeds came back, before those plant indicators came back. Ideally, it would have been planted absolutely right away, but this gives me a good opportunity to show you how to apply a dry soil amendment. Now, most of that I just told you about would do well to be worked into the soil. The phosphorus certainly would do well to be worked into the soil, and you can work a little bit into the planting holes. But I'm just gonna very lightly work it into the soil surface, inch or two deep. You could use a hard rake, a bow rake for that. It'll work a lot better. And then plant it. And if you're not gonna plant it, either get a cover crop down, get some living, growing, green plants into the system, sending biological foods, those exudates down into the soil, and you know, get it going for the season. If you're not going to do that, if you're not going to plant it directly with your veggies and you're not going to get a cover crop down, make sure you cover it right away with a mulch, plant-based mulch, so that at least you're feeding the decomposers, those roly-polies, those earthworms, those little microarthropods, springtails and such. Keep those guys working the soil, organic matter, or breaking down that plant mulch and making a good habitat for your plant roots, and then get it planted as soon as you can. Get those exudates going down into the soil and building your soil structure. Okay, that's applying soil amendments.